Okay, so we are looking at contrast, aren't we, this week? We've been looking at sentence structure, okay? And it's really important for us to understand how those sentences are structured together. We've looked at that over and over again. So we're talking about getting clauses, okay, sections of sentences and putting them together. We can't just take an idea, put a comma, put an idea. It doesn't work in English. If you want to add another idea into a sentence, you've got various phrases, and, but, because, all of those kinds of things, those linkers, which can connect clauses. Next week, we'll be looking at listing, and we'll be looking at relative clauses and participle clauses, a few other ways of doing it. But this week, we're talking about using linkers, okay? So a few linkers that we've looked at already this week: because, as a result of, due to, owing to, as a result, resulting in, therefore, consequently. We've looked at all of those. Yesterday, we introduced but, although, however. All right, so we'll quickly have a look at but, although, and however, and then we'll move on. We'll look at despite and in spite of, and we'll do some exercises. That's the idea today. So let's go and open our study document. Okay, so here we go. Here it is. Can everyone see our study document?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So yesterday we talked about but, didn't we? Now, but is the easiest one. In terms of contrast, we're saying this thing is opposite that, or we're saying this thing is followed by a result, which is not what we expect. Okay, so think about what the opposite of being reminded to be compliant is. Well, that's a strange thing to think of. So you could think either he wasn't reminded to be compliant, that could be the opposite, or it could be he was reminded to be non-compliant. That could be an opposite as well. In this sentence, we're not looking for an opposite. If we look at this, he forgets to take his medication. That's not the opposite of being reminded, but it's a kind of surprising result. If you remind someone to be compliant, what's the usual outcome?
Be compliant.
Is
expect to take the medication.
Yeah, they take the medication. If you remind someone to do something, then what you're hoping and expecting is that they will do that thing. If they don't do it, then it's a cause for contrast. Okay, if you said Paul was reminded to be compliant because he forgets to take his medication, that makes sense as well. Okay, but if you put Paul was reminded to be compliant and he forgets to take his medication, then those two ideas don't really go together with and. So those linkers, they tell the listener, or they tell the reader, the relationship between those ideas. So if we have a good, clear idea of what the relationship is between those ideas, we choose the right linker, and then the next step is understand the grammar that follows that linker. So but, although, and however have the same function, okay? They're all contrast. They can all be used, okay? They can all be used to show that there's a surprising result or that there's a contradiction in the second clause, but they don't have the same grammar. Safi, have you got a question?
Good morning, sir. If we add despite Paul was reminded.
No, we can't do that. And that's what we're going to look at today, Safi. Okay,
thank you.
We'll look at that later. Okay, so but is always there in the middle of the sentence, nice and easy. We never get it wrong, no problem. Although is a bit different. Although can go at the beginning or it can go in the middle. Now, beginning, middle, I think that's too simple a way of thinking about it. It doesn't really go at the beginning. It doesn't really go in the middle. It goes in a specific place. It goes at the beginning of a clause, okay? Not just the beginning. It doesn't just go in the middle, okay? In the middle's here. But what if I did a really, really, really long first clause? Okay, Paul, let's do that. Paul often forgets to take his antihypertensive medication in the morning before his breakfast, although he was reminded to be compliant. Okay, now, if you look at although, is although in the middle of that sentence?
Yes.
Are you sure it's in the middle?
Not
No.
makes sense.
No, this one's in the middle, isn't it? Because
Beginning of
it's sort of equal amount, isn't it? The middle means that you've got an equal amount here, then you've got the middle, then you've got an equal amount. Although is not in the middle. There's a reason why it's in the place that it's in. Okay, it's in this place because it begins the next clause. You wouldn't just put although here. That's the middle, isn't it? We don't just put that there. We're not looking for the middle. We're looking for the beginning of the next clause. All right. That's what although is there to do. It begins that contrast clause for us. Okay. So we've got although in two different places. However is very similar to although, and people make mistakes with although and however. They mix them up and they treat although like however, and they treat however like although. Now, it is possible for us to put however in the middle of a sentence, okay? But it's not, again, in the middle. If we look at it, it's somewhere else. Where would you tell me? Where is however in this sentence?
After subject.
After the subject in the second sentence. It's after the subject. It's not in the middle. There's no such thing as in the middle in grammar. It's always in a specific place. We don't just say, oh, I'll put it there. We put it in a specific place. So in this case, because we're comparing different GPs, I can put it there after the subject in the second sentence. I don't have to, though. I could just put it here. However, my new GP is very friendly, but I'm not going to. All right. Now, that's not very useful for OET. It's just something that I wanted to show everyone. This is more useful for OET. Let's use, however, at the beginning of a second sentence, not a second clause, second sentence. So although is a linker that connects clauses inside one sentence. However, connects ideas, it does, but those ideas are separated into two sentences, and however goes at the beginning of that second sentence, never the first sentence, and it's got a comma after it, immediately after. Although does not have that comma. Very, very common that people mix although and however together. My advice to you is write 10 sentences with although and then write them again with however. Then you won't forget. That for me is a simple way to remember and to remind yourself. Like when I was young, I used to write down telephone numbers and it would help me remember them. If I write it down 5 times, I've got a much better chance of remembering that number. So a bit of quick repetition, paraphrasing into the next linker, I'm sure you'll remember it. So, do we have any questions at present about the function of but, although, however, or the grammar?
I just want to ask about though. So
Yes.
with though, it can be in the middle because I read some listening script, you know, you can
Yeah.
see though in the middle.
Yeah, all of these are the same.
Yeah.
They're all the same. So Paul was reminded to be compliant, though he forgets to take his medication, even though is fine as well. The thing
So
about
when it,
though,
yeah.
well, the thing about though is that it can also go at the end of a sentence, which you
So in
wouldn't
this
do it.
situation, it though is synonym, it's like this, however.
No, you wouldn't. No, it's a synonym of although. It's just a synonym. These 4 are just the same. The thing about though is that people often use it. We were talking before the class began about phrases like Yanni and you know and in it. it's a kind of, we call them, it's a strange word, but we call it a verbal tick. It's not always used to show contrast. Sometimes we just say it at the end of a sentence, just because we want to say a word at the end of a sentence.
So,
But it can also be used as contrast. So for instance, someone might say something like, have you done your homework? No, I've washed the windows though.
mm,
No, I've washed the windows though. So it's a bit weird, isn't it?
yeah.
But that's very, very informal, very, very native, very informal. No, I've washed the windows though. It's like saying, I haven't done what you wanted, but I've done something good anyway. So it's one of those indirect contrasts. So for me, that's the only thing really that's different about these four. The rest of them, you can just use them the same way. All right.
So with the one you just and then something we can it's similar like well, so we can call it like Viola.
It's not the same as like, well, it's not exactly the same as that because it does perform a sort of contrast thing, but people often use it without doing that. But the best thing to do is probably just do a little bit of practice and just write some sentences, send them over to me.
Okay, I
Right.
will. Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on then. I've got another couple of things that I'd like to talk about. I'm going to talk about in spite of the fact that and despite the fact that in a moment. These two here, I'm going to save these, okay, because they're not really applicable to writing, they're more applicable to reading. And this is more of a writing language class. So if we get some time tomorrow, after we do some reviews, I'll have a look at that one, okay? What I want to show us now, I want to move on and talk about despite and in spite of. So let's get this onto a new page. Okay, so yesterday, someone asked me, okay, and we had a look at it, and we've just had a question earlier, despite he was. Okay, let's take these away. Okay, despite he was. This phrase will never happen. Okay, this phrase will never happen in English. And there's a reason for that, because despite is always followed by a noun clause. Okay, not just a noun. Okay, he is a noun. We know that he's a noun. Yeah, but it's not that. It's a noun clause. Remember what we said about that. Noun clauses are either,
ing,
well, let's do it. Okay, it's either a simple noun. Okay, or if you want
Gerund.
action, the action is a gerund, isn't it? And sometimes we can put the object pronoun. So that will be him, it, them, us, okay, you. So these are object pronouns. So I hit him, I told her, I ate it, I moved them, you reminded us, I hurt you, okay? These are all object pronouns. That means that we do verbs to those things, they receive verbs. So noun clauses have got these things in. Noun clauses do not have subject verb. They never do. So despite he was never happens in English. All right. So let me write the sentence incorrectly. Despite he was told to take his medicine. Let's do that. Mr. Smith forgot to do it. Okay, now we've always got one verb clause. One of these will be a verb clause. It's not this one. It's this one. That one's a verb clause. Okay, Mr. Smith forgot, subject plus verb. This bit, no, it's not. Let me do another one as well. Okay, It's not a medical one, but there's a difference between these two examples. Can anyone tell me what the difference is between these two sentences?
The first one is
Passive.
first one is passive. The second one is
Yeah,
if
this one's passive, isn't it? So which one do you think is going to be more difficult?
first one.
First one, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so let's do the active one first. Really simple. Despite he needed some money. Okay, now, he needed, what's the verb?
Needed.
Need. Okay, and what's the gerund form of need?
Needing.
Needing.
Despite needing some money, Mr. Green did not have a job. Okay, let me ask Safi, are you happy with that sentence? Do you like it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I like it as well because we've got despite.
But one thing you mentioned before, sir, that it will never happen in English, but usually I saw people are particularly writing in emails, despite that.
Despite that.
Yeah.
That's
That's
different.
is different.
That's very different. Okay, I'll show you that one in a minute. Okay, I'm going to write it here so we don't forget it. Okay, I'll tell you about that one in a minute. But Safi, help me with this one, the passive one.
Despite he was being told.
Close, close. Okay, so let's go back. Where's the verb?
Told, was told.
Was told, that's the verb. So we don't need to add anything.
Okay.
Okay, we just need to convert. What is the gerund of the verb to be?
Tolding, what being.
Yes. So despite being
Being
told, okay, to take his medicine. Okay. That's how that sentence goes. So despite is our linker, and then the passive gerund, that's what we call it, isn't it? Passive gerund. So despite being told to take his medication, Mr. Smith forgot to do it. Okay, so we're going to move on in a minute and talk about despite going in another part of the sentence. But let's just look at despite that. Now, despite that is an interesting one because what type of word is that? Safi, just Safi, what type of word is that?
That is a linker.
No, it's not a linker.
That, despite that, or emphasize.
Pronoun.
That is a pronoun.
Demonstrative pronoun.
It's a pronoun.
Relative plus.
So, okay, that we've got this, that, these, and those, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is something which is close to you. That is something which is far away from you.
Yeah.
These is something which is plural, which is close to you, and those is something plural, which is far away from you. That's the idea. That's a basic idea of that. But when we say despite that, what we're actually doing is we're referring to something that we've already said. So I have severe pain in my right foot. Despite that, comma, I am going to play football today. Okay, so let me take these away. Don't want that. Okay, I have severe pain in my right foot. What do you think? Now, this is just Safi again. What do you think that means?
That means severe pain in my right foot.
Exactly. So what is that? We said it's a pronoun. Pronouns are basically nouns, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're basically nouns. They perform the role of nouns. So despite that, I'm referring back to a previous sentence. And I think, Safi, that that's a really key thing to learn about OET reading. It's easy when you first start doing OET reading to just think, this is the sentence. This is the sentence, and you don't know what that refers to. But once you learn something like that, you go, okay, that's what it is. If I was to write it again, I could say, despite severe pain in my right foot.
Despite having.
Yes, I'm going to play football today. Now, this is for me, oh, not severe pain. This for me is this is the reward for practicing and learning grammar. You can change and say things in different ways. When you read it in text, you can look at it and understand what it means. But basically, these two sentences mean, these two ideas mean the same thing. This one is just two clauses in one sentence, and this is two sentences. Just a slightly different thing. Does that make sense, Safi?
Very clear now. Thank you so much.
Okay, so despite, we can use it at the beginning of a sentence. All right, we can use it at the beginning, but we can also move it around and we can put it in the middle. Again, we generally don't use commas with it. Okay, so if I was to ask Carolina, are you there, Carolina?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Carolina, can you just change the order of that sentence for me? This one here.
Despite not having a job, Mr. Green needs some money.
Okay. Now you've done something which is much more difficult. I was just asking for you to move the clauses. Okay, all I wanted you to do was to say, Mr. Green did not have a job, despite needing some money.
Oh, in this way, all right.
Yeah, that's all I wanted you to do. But you've done something different. Okay, so you haven't just moved the clauses, you've changed the meaning of the sentence.
Yes.
In this case, it doesn't really change the meaning of the sentence much, does it? You know, the situation is pretty much the same. It hasn't changed a lot, but there are other times when it can change the job can change the meaning. In this case, it doesn't really change the meaning much, but for me, all you've done there is you've written a different sentence. Here, you haven't written a different sentence, really. You've just moved where the clauses are. So if we sort of think to ourselves, I'm going to put the surprising thing after despite. Okay, let's put it like that. That's one way to think of it. And if I'm going to rephrase the sentence, I'm just going to move it, the whole clause, including the linker, to the middle of the sentence. Now, Claudio, are you there? No, Claudio. Ling, are you there?
Yes, hello, good morning, Paul.
Hi, Ling. Can you tell me the difference between despite and in spite of?
Yeah, only spelling different, grammar the same.
Perfect. Yeah, there's no difference. Despite and in spite of have exactly the same function.
One is 3 words, one is 1 word.
Say that again? Yeah, one's 1 word and one's 3 words. Yeah. So what we don't want to see is this. Oh, we don't want that. What we don't want to see is this. What we don't want to see is this. Okay. What we definitely don't want to see is this. So all of those are incorrect. Just from a spelling perspective, there's no such thing as despite of. Put your hand up if you've ever done despite of. Anyone here ever done despite of? Yeah. Oh, we only got one honest student. Oh, we've got 2. We've got, okay, here we go. Yeah, okay. It's something which happens all the time, isn't it? It's an easy thing to do, but let's try and remember that we don't need to put of with despite. Okay. So any questions at the moment?
Yes, Paul.
Yes,
This is
go
me.
on. Go
Yes.
on.
Can we say Mr. Green did not have a job despite he needed some money?
Okay, let's do it.
Mhm.
Let's do it. Okay, let's look at the rules. So you've just said Mr. Green did not have a job despite he needs.
He needed.
He needed. Okay, he needed. Okay.
I'm like active.
Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
What do we think as a class? Anyone, any ideas?
No, we cannot because despite he.
No.
Make it
Oh,
It's
because
fine
we
for over
used
now.
it. Because we
right. He
Well,
needing.
It's not a tense problem, is it? It's a clause problem. It's not a
Yeah.
noun clause. He needed. Okay, what's he? He is a subject.
Subject.
Needed is
Verb
what?
plus.
As a verb.
It's a verb, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, we can't do it. We
Uh,
can't do that. So this is an interesting part that often comes up. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what this tense is, okay? Because there's a rule here. The rule is that after despite, you always put a noun or a noun clause.
oh,
The other rule is that every time you use a verb, you use a tense, don't you?
yes.
But you can't give a noun a tense. So in this case, there's no compromise. The noun wins, okay, and the tense disappears. So it's always despite needing.
Okay, okay.
So you might say now, how do I know what tense it is? You know what tense it is from this clause.
Hmm.
So what tense is this?
It's a past tense.
Past simple.
Okay. And you said he needed, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I know that this is the past tense. Okay. If I change this to he does not,
Mhm.
then I know that this is the present.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so we're getting more into the tense discussion there. But basically we don't put tense after despite because it's a noun. It's not possible to do it.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Okay.
But Paul, between despite and needing, we can use a pronoun like him.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Is it necessary here?
Not really, but
No, it's not.
I'm wondering if we can use.
You can, yeah. Now, we could spend a week on all of the different possible exceptions for this. There are some times where we put the pronoun and there are sometimes we don't. It's good. It would take a long time to go through and we wouldn't really benefit from it. Not for OET writing anyway. Okay.
Can we use just need because needs a verb and a noun as well?
Okay. If you wanted to do it, you'd have to put despite the need of.
Oh, the need of, yeah.
Yeah, some money. So you can do it, yeah, and it is always good to know that certain words can be verbs and nouns. Loads of words can, but yeah, when you're doing that kind of paraphrasing, the grammar changes, doesn't it? Yeah. It could be the need for, the need for, or despite money needs. You could possibly put that, or despite his need for money. There are loads of different ways you could do that one. Okay, so, okay. Should we, yeah, let's move on. Okay. Earlier on, I also mentioned that we got these phrases. Okay, in spite of the fact that and despite the fact that. They are followed by verb clauses, even though they've got in spite of and they've got despite. They're just verbs. Okay, so they can go at the beginning. They're basically the same as although. In spite of the fact that Mr. Smith exercises frequently. Why don't we try that? Pop a sentence, pop your finish for that sentence in the chat box, guys. Anybody can do it. Just pop it in there. Anybody can do it. You got about 30 seconds, guys. What could you put to finish that sentence? Okay, that one works. He is obese. Yeah, okay. He is not fit. Yeah. He has not lost weight. I like that. Yeah, he has not lost weight. He is obese. Okay. He is unfit. That's good as well. He is overweight. Yeah. Now we've got some strange things. He still's overweight. He obsess. He has not lose weight. Let's make sure that we get the verbs correct. But you're correct. It is a verb clause, isn't it? He has not lost weight. He is obese. Yeah. Good. Okay. He has not lost. He is. That works. Now, we often try and be more concise, don't we, in OET writing? In spite of the fact that, That's 6 words. So what do you think, guys? Do you think that you would put that in your writing? 6 words?
No.
No, we should use only one word.
Yeah. If we think about it, we can use despite, can't we? Just use one word. It's easier. And, you know, it's fewer words, less for you to get wrong. Okay. So for me, I would say we don't need to use these ones, but you will see them in reading. Okay. So in spite of the fact that, also, Mr. Smith has not lost weight in spite of the fact that he exercises frequently, changing those pronouns. Okay, so I've got some exercises for us to do. All right, some exercises for us to do, which will involve a bit of paraphrasing. Okay, first one is spot the mistakes. I've got some sentences here for us to have a look at for mistakes. And then I've also got some here where we can use some prompts and write some sentences. So let's do spot the mistakes first. Okay, I'll put that on here and I'll give everyone, I'll give everyone 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes starting now. Don't give me any answers yet, guys. If you're watching our stream here, we do this all